Welcome to A Second Helping with Allison Bartow, a wedding photography podcast with a focus on second shooting. All right, well, let's get into your background and your history. So, like any wedding photographer out there, you started by shooting automotives, right?
Yeah. Well, way back, my start was like nature, deer, landscapes, animals around me. But the first paid work that I got was automotive work.
Automotive work. And how did you get that gig?
Funnily enough, I was working at a cafe at the time. And one of the bakers there that I was friends with was doing this job for a local car dealer and using her phone to shoot all the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And she got another job and couldn't spare the time to do it anymore. So she offered it to me and another guy who was conveniently also named Mike at the bakery, and we were both photographers, but like amateur photographers at the time.
Do you know what he shot?
He shot a lot of food for the cafe.
Oh, okay. All right. So
and he
nature
did, like,
versus
portraits
food
and stuff on the side.
Sorry, what was that?
He did portraits and things on the side as well.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But she just had us show up one day, and I went there, and it was a very cold, not great day to be outside, and I was the only one that showed up. So I just kind of audibled into the job, and I remember like the first time I was doing the job, I was just like, wow, I get paid to drive cars and take pictures. This is kind of crazy.
Where would you drive them to?
There's a little park nearby. It's like less than a 5-minute drive, but it's just nicer than shooting cars in the lot with all the other cars around.
I just assumed that that's where you were shooting. That makes a lot of sense that you would go someplace with a nicer background.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but most dealers just, have someone with their phones shooting in the lot because they don't care that much, and it's just kind of like, you do the basics and you sell the cars, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. This place cares a little bit more about their photography, clearly, because they actually hire someone to do it, and then they want you to go to this little lot and take like nicer photos.
And it is a local, like a family-owned business, correct?
Yep.
I love that. So you're working for them, working at the bakery, and what was your next step with photography? Did you start getting into portraits then?
I was doing portraits on the side, just as something I enjoyed doing. So I wasn't really getting paid much for that. I started doing music photography as well, since my background as a musician before being a photographer just gave me access to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just shooting for a local recording studio that had a once-a-month event called the Musicians Gathering. And I just kind of asked them when I got my new camera, I was like, hey, can I just like shoot the events because I'm already there and it'd be good practice for me? And they're like, oh, sure.
Yeah.
And then they started asking me for my photos so they could post them like on Facebook. And they had a photographer that was doing their social media and taking the photos. And I remember some nights I would show up and she would be like, hey, I'm really burnt out. What are the odds that you could just shoot everything for me tonight and then like send me the photos?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of ended up doing that a couple times.
Did she start paying you?
No, that was kind of a volunteer thing. I didn't really care either.
And it was building your portfolio and giving you that experience that you were looking for.
Right.
And okay, so, and did you have at the same time you had another job, a full-time job?
Yeah, well, I was working part-time at cafes at the time.
Okay.
Which, sometimes would be full-time or more because cafes are crazy.
They are.
And then I would just shoot things on the side. And then I also got invited to shoot for a school photography gig doing like school sports, which is from another friend of mine through music. She kind of just saw me starting to shoot and posting my stuff online. And she was like, hey, I really like your stuff. And I think you should just come shoot for me. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about sports. And she was like, it doesn't matter. You'll figure it out.
Have you played any sports when you were younger, or were you always into music?
I did play some sports. I just did like basketball, soccer, and I did swimming and stuff when I was a kid, but never like professionally or trying to be in any sense, just pick up games.
So what sports were you shooting?
I was shooting primarily like football, basketball, baseball. Yeah, that was like
anything that the school had going on.
Yeah, every once in a while there'd be like wrestling or cheerleading or something like that, but primarily it was just all the bigger sports, basically.
Got it. And
the bigger American stuff.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. It was the kind of job that you like outgrow or you hit your skill ceiling with very quickly. Because all the shots are very set up for you. You're shooting on a green screen, or you're shooting to a brief. Like you have the poses and everything, and you just do that over and over. I see what you mean. Right, so you were doing like the portraits of the athletes? For the most part.
Okay.
I would do action sometimes, which was my favorite part.
Mm-hmm.
I did it once, and I was like, wait, this company does this? And I asked my friend Amy, who was the manager, and she was like, oh, yeah, we do that sometimes. Do you want more of those? And I'm like, can I have all of them?
Yeah.
And she was like, sure, you can have all of them.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
I ended up shooting a lot of like hockey primarily for that during the winter.
I feel like that would be hard. Was it hard?
The lighting is the worst part.
Mm-hmm.
I had to upgrade my camera because at the time I was shooting on a Nikon D30-300.
Okay.
And that thing could not handle indoor low light action sports. It just couldn't do it at all. But yeah, just like the lighting of an indoor ice rink is terrible. It's a whole bunch of overhead lights that tend to not have the same light bulbs in them, so they're all different color temperatures.
Yeah. That sounds terrible.
And then it's action, and you're shooting through the plexiglass.
Plexiglass, yeah.
Yeah, because
trying to focus on a little
professional,
puck.
so you don't have like a little peephole that like the professionals get.
Okay.
So you're just shooting through really beat up glass and like looking for the best little spot of clear glass that you can get a shot through.
Oh yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
When you upgraded your camera from the Nikon, what did you move to then?
I went straight to a Sony A7R III.
Okay. And you noticed a big difference right away then with that?
Huge difference. I mean, the cameras are night and day. One's like an entry-level, somewhat beginner camera, and the other one's a professional camera.
Yeah. So that probably made it more fun right away, too. Just not struggling. So
yeah.
You're doing that for a while, and then what was your next step with photography or your next move?
So I made a lot of like good friends and networking through that job, the sports job.
Okay.
And I actually started shooting like bigger concerts, just like medium level venues in Philadelphia. But I was doing this for trade. Like I would trade photos for press access to shows and tickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I used my portfolio from my friends' music stuff to get into that.
Got it.
So that's something I do still on the side, but that's kind of what my next step was.
Yeah.
And then from there, I had a friend who who turned me on to a Facebook group that a lot of us know about as second shooters. It's the Speakeasy for Philadelphia and South Jersey, South Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of jumped into that in the beginning of like the fall season of, I think, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just crazy because everyone was having people dropping like flies because of COVID and like reschedules, and everything was insane. So all I saw was people like screaming for second shooters like last minute.
Yeah, it was mayhem because people would feel all right and then they'd have to take a test and be like, oh my God, I can't go to the wedding tomorrow or today. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was doing that and I just went, okay, I'll just throw my name into the hat basically and see what happens. So I reached out to a few people and said like, hey, I'm newer, but I can do this, I think, you know?
Mm-hmm. Hey, I can shoot behind scratched up plexiglass, so how hard could this be?
Right. Like, what's the difference? And of course that came with its growing pains, but I got a few jobs in that season, and I made a decent amount of money like up front from it, and I was like, wow, this is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just kind of how I got like my foot in the door into weddings, which is more where I am now. I've shot a bunch of random stuff in between. I've done like a little bit of marketing for different companies, and I've done portraits for musicians and other stuff, but none of it has been things that like stuck as a permanent thing.
Right. As like an avenue for you. So now tell me, because I love this, how did you get linked up and when did you join ShootWithMe?
ShootWithMe, I joined pretty quickly. I just saw it through the group when I was on there one day. I just saw everyone was kind of talking about it, and I just kind of thought that it was something that the group did. I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that it was like brand new and like only a few people were doing it. But I just saw a lot of buzz about it, and I was like, you know, it's worth a shot. This was back also, like, currently ShootWithMe is you join for free, and then you don't have to pay for a membership until you get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, it didn't even have that, so I just paid for it blindly.
Yeah. When I signed up, you just started with a subscription.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just jumped on there, and I was like, well, if I don't get a job within the first, like, few months, then I'll just cancel it.
Right. Because it's not that expensive.
No, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
I figured, like, if I get a job or two, it's worth it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I got hired. My first hire on there was from Nathan, one of the co-owners of ShootWithMe.
I love this.
And he hired me for a last-minute wedding that he had someone drop out of, like, a few days before it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and shot for him, and I kind of thought I knew what I was doing at that point, but I, like, completely just botched everything. Like,
that's probably an exaggeration.
My photos were fine, but they were not to his expectation, basically.
Okay.
He was, he just expects a certain level. He's been doing this forever, so when he sees someone, he just kind of, I guess, expects that they're going to be at least his idea of what the bare minimum is.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, my photos weren't horrible, but I didn't really understand how to use window light super well for like groom prep.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of misunderstood his communication with like his expectations of what he wanted from the shoot. He was like, oh, if you do groom prep, you're pretty much like smooth sailing through the rest of the day. I don't really expect anything from you. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just use this to like try different things and not be under much pressure, you know?
Right.
So I ended up doing a whole lot of like weird shutter dragging and stuff during the reception and trying to like figure out that technique at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember afterwards, he was just like, Yeah, a lot of the stuff just isn't usable to me.
Oh, it's like a dagger through the heart.
Yeah. He gave me really good feedback, though, and it helped a lot. And he was really nice to work for throughout the day, and we got along really well. And he taught me a bunch about ShootWithMe, and he said, like, hey, put your rate to, like, 40 an hour since you're newer, and you'll probably get more jobs. Or yeah, he said put it to as low as you're comfortable doing, basically.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're more people, their interest will be piqued because you're more affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that's more in line with where your skill level was at that time.
Right. Exactly. And I had no way of really knowing what to charge. I just saw like what other people were offering in the group. So I was like, okay, it seems like 50 is like the standard. So I'll just charge that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember doing that, getting all that feedback, and it being hard to take, but also at the same time, it being really valuable and useful to have. And he had offered, he was like, hey, I know you're just starting out, so like in the future, I'd be willing to like, he was like, I have a class that you could take and you could learn like the ins and outs of a whole wedding day, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And he like showed me it, and like I saw the price of it, and I was like, I can't afford that, but I appreciate it. And then he was like, well, I'll let you shadow me if that works for you on like a future wedding.
Which is a nice offer because a lot of
Oh, yeah.
people are, would love that opportunity.
Yeah, I jumped on it immediately. I was like, of course I want to do that. I was just like, let me win, or let me know when. And
yeah.
He was, I was just kind of expecting that he wouldn't hire me again until we worked something out and until I got to shadow him.
Mm-hmm.
So a few months later, I'd check in with him like every other month or so, because I didn't really know like what wedding seasons were at the time. And I was just like, I wanted to make sure that I got that opportunity if he was still offering it.
So every other month you would just touch base with him to make
Yeah.
sure that was still on the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's important because a lot of people like, oh, he said it, so it'll happen. But you stayed on top of him because he's meeting other people in the meantime. He's the co-founder of ShootWithMe. Mm-hmm. So, all right, you're touching base, and then what happens?
So I'm waiting, basically. He's telling me, wait for, it was like, I think when I was talking to him was during the winter. So he's like, wait till like April, May, when the season will start, and then I'll get you on something.
Mm-hmm. No, let me ask you one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Before you had joined ShootWithMe and shot with him,
mm-hmm.
you were on the Speakeasy group and you were able to secure a few second shooting gigs. How many other weddings had you second shot for before your first wedding with Nathan?
2 or 3. 2 or 3. Around that time. I had second shot one way back when I was still shooting for the sports photography company.
Okay.
Like more actively doing that. I shot for one of their employees who needed someone. But
Mm-hmm.
that was a little like dip your toes kind of experience, but it was nothing like any of the other stuff that I ended up shooting later.
Yeah. And I think with wedding photography, people just have no idea until you shoot or second shoot a wedding, what's involved with a wedding day from a photography standpoint.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot more involved than you would think. And it's an amalgamation of all different styles of photography, depending on how you shoot things. But,
and who you're shooting for.
Yeah, like what the client is, what the studio you're working for is, because it's, when you're second shooting and you're newer, you're generally just being asked to shoot in the style of the studio that you're working with, and the studios aren't hiring you for your style.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So now it's April or in that time frame, and you're checking with Nathan, you're looking for that opportunity to shadow him. And what happens next?
So yeah, I'm waiting for him to give me this opportunity to shadow, basically. And then he just reaches out to me on ShootWithMe with a booking to second shoot like a midweek wedding, which is kind of an odd one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably like an hour and a half away from me also, like pretty far.
Okay. Where was it? Out of curiosity. What was the venue?
I don't remember the venue. It was a big farm out towards Lancaster.
Okay. All right. So it's an hour and a half drive. It's a middle of the week.
Yeah.
So,
and for one, I didn't expect him to just like hire me again. I didn't expect to work for him again ever.
Yeah, I love it
because
it's the co-founder of ShootWithMe. He has access to every second shooter out there. And you said you completely botched it. And I just love that, you obviously did a lot of things the right way, whether it was your interaction with him or whatever. So he reaches out and, gives you another chance.
Yeah, which I was not expecting to get, to be completely honest about it. Yeah, he reaches out and just goes like, hey, do you want to second shoot a midweek wedding with me? And I was like, yeah. Like, why wouldn't I want to do that? And we go and we shoot the wedding. It ends up going really smoothly. And I actually end up connecting with the groom and best man because they were both named Mike randomly. And they're both Italian, which I am too. So it was just like, we just connected
bunch of Italian
immediately.
Mikes.
Yeah. And and I just did the best I could and, just shot to the best that I knew and took what he told me into consideration the last time.
How nervous were you going in to the wedding with him? Pretty nervous?
Yeah.
I would think you'd be more nervous than if it was just a second shooting opportunity with somebody else because you had that background, with him. Do you remember at the time any of the advice he gave you, like going into that wedding, like what his expectations were for you for that one?
I don't remember specifically like what he was asking for that one. I remember some of the feedback he gave me. He was mainly just like giving me tips about like cropping and like not over cropping in camera so that you leave the like control up to whoever's editing.
Okay.
Because like you tend to see a shot that you want and like you see it in your eye, so you crop it the way you see it. But he was kind of saying like pull back a little bit and like give even more space than that so that the person editing can decide how to do it for themselves.
It makes sense because then you've got more. Yes,
yeah.
You can crop in, like, you can't crop out.
Right. He was telling me how to shoot with window light because I had some of the window in some of my shots from the first time we worked together.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying like you're almost like silhouetting your subject doing that, and on top of that, like your eye is drawn to the highest, like the brightest point in the frame, and that's going to be the window and not the subject of the person.
Isn't it such a difference when you start figuring out how to position that groom by the window for the groom prep shots?
Oh, yeah.
So you knew that. And it sounds like that's a big priority for Nathan, your role of that day to get good groom prep shots. How did you feel with your groom prep? I don't know if you remember that specific wedding, but, I
remember most of it.
Okay.
I remember the prep space that I was given. Like the room that they were getting ready in had no windows. It was below ground.
Ooh.
So I had to shoot it all either like with just a bunch of ISO or with my flash.
Okay.
So I did basic shots of them, like him and his best man, like just chilling out. And they were like having a little bit of whiskey beforehand. And they had their bottle there, and they had like their details and stuff. So I got all of those things, and I got pictures of their jackets and all that kind of thing. They were also like, it was a father and son for groom and best man.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because he had been married a few times.
Few times.
Yeah.
I guess after you get married a few times, you just start doing weekday weddings.
I guess so.
Just open it up. Maybe at another wedding the upcoming weekend. So more intimate. So you just had them.
Yeah.
And then, now, did you reach out to Nathan to be like, hey, look, I'm in this basement. Would you prefer high ISO or would you prefer flash? Or did you just go with it and, did both and figured you'd see what would happen?
Mm-hmm. I did a little bit of both, but he also kind of warned me about it ahead of time.
Okay.
He said, get what you can get down there, but also he's like, you can bring them up to like the main barn room and do more of the shots in front of the windows there.
Got it.
I was just in communication with him, to make sure that you don't cross paths with the bridal party as well.
Yeah.
Which is standard on a wedding day, but stuff that I was still getting used to as a newer shooter.
Yeah. And it's important that he says, get some shots down there. I know it's difficult, so come up here because you're brand new. You're a little bit nervous. You don't want to botch the second opportunity. So it's nice because if not, you typically stay where groom prep is happening. So that guidance is nice because then you know what he's okay with.
Right. If he didn't tell me what I could do and then I could take them out and go to another place and it would be better, then I probably wouldn't have done that. I would have just stayed there,
Yeah. So, and then how did the rest of the wedding go?
It went well. I was able to get some nice shots of them getting ready in front of that window, just like doing some mock-up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a few shots of them just like walking through the venue. That the venue was really pretty, so it was easy to get shots that just looked nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then through the rest of the day, it was pretty simple. Nathan had me, do the usual, do like cocktail hour, grip and grins, and just mingling stuff. I was also just like floating around and getting secondary angles and other things. There were a couple times when he was out doing something else and the family would like ask me, hey, can you do this group shot? And I didn't see him anywhere, so I would just cover it. And yeah, for the most part, everything was pretty smooth. There was just the usual like little hiccups during the day of like, where's the family during the formals and that kind of stuff, which is, still newer to me at the time, but pretty standard now that I've had a few more weddings.
Were you going through and doing the whole like calling out the family members for the portraits, for the family portraits?
I was hunting them down because they were just like nowhere to be found.
That's really easy to do with people you don't know.
Oh, it's not fun at all.
I've never had to go
in an orchard that was on site, and they were all in the barn somewhere or around the barn. So I was like running back and forth. So it was not just like close by either.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Oh my God.
That was probably the worst part of that wedding. But
yeah, because
Nathan was just really helpful overall throughout the whole day.
Yeah. Would he check your settings like for the flash and stuff just to kind of check in with you to see how it was looking or no?
He would just check my test shots like when we set up for reception.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just asked him straight up, like, where do I put my flashes? Because you've worked here and I haven't.
Right.
Which is something I usually do when I'm working for a shooter who's worked at a venue multiple times. And either I haven't worked there or I've worked there minimally. I'll just ask them what they do. For one, so we can coordinate. We don't have stands everywhere.
Yeah.
And then two, I can kind of mimic what they prefer as far as lighting for a reception.
Yeah. I always ask too, because they're going to have an opinion on whether they want stands everywhere or they'd rather have them kind of nested together. And they're the ones that are going to have to clean images up if they've got stands everywhere protruding out of people. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they're primarily cross lighting and they want a certain area to not have a stand in it.
Mm-hmm. So now, did you get feedback from Nathan at the end of the night, or did he give you feedback after he looked at the photos, or both?
I didn't really get feedback at the end of the night. It was kind of similar to the first wedding with him. Everything during the day itself went fine, and we worked together fine. I was sweating a little bit when I couldn't find like the family, and he was calling me, and he was like, "Where are they?"
Yeah.
But otherwise, everything went fine. And I finished before he did. So I remember packing up all my stuff and heading out, and he was still working. But a little bit after we had finished that wedding, probably like a week or so after, he sent me a review on ShootWithMe, and it was just like a glowing review.
Oh.
He said that he was amazed with like the progress that I'd made in the last 6 months, and he said he would recommend me to anyone at that point.
Wow. That's
And
a glowing review.
Yeah, he sent me like private feedback also, and it was some of the same stuff, some of like just watching out for cropping and that kind of thing. But he said overall, like my work had improved a ton since the last time I worked with him.
And in that time period between the weddings, had you shot any other weddings for anybody else?
I shot 1 or 2 other weddings, and I assisted for a couple.
What would you attribute all that growth to in that amount of time?
I mean, honestly, getting to shoot a couple more helped, but really just the feedback and really keeping that all in my mind as I was shooting, and then the couple that I'd assisted, just like intently watching what other people did. I'm usually able to figure out, like I have a pretty good background in just like learning how to do lighting. I've watched, I'm self-taught. I watched a ton of like YouTube. I watched like Adorama videos when I was first starting on lighting. And so I understand just how lighting works and how to set it up. It's just doing it on a wedding day that makes it harder, because it's a lot more intense. It's a lot more fast paced. So being able to watch other people do it and watch how they set up, and occasionally like ask them questions when they seem like they're not too busy. That was a big thing. Like when assisting, I never wanted to like be annoying to the person I was assisting. Like I wanted information from them, but I would only ask them when I felt like they were able to give information, or I would ask them if they could show me some of the stuff.
Yeah, it's a wild part of this job because you're really only working with someone at the busiest part of their entire week, and they're under pressure and they've got to perform what they need to get done, and they don't have a ton of time to be answering questions and giving feedback. So the fact that you're able to pay attention and watch is huge, and then knowing how to ask the right questions at the right time.
And right, and like some photographers are more adept to just kind of being on autopilot, for lack of a better way to explain that, but
it's in the, you get in the zone kind of.
Yeah, they've done what they do so much that they can kind of autopilot their setup and talk about it at the same time, you know? So they don't need to be so focused on what they're doing because they've done it before, so they can explain a little bit while they're going through the process. They don't have all of their mental bandwidth taken up by the task at hand.
It's a good point. Yeah. They've got the ability, it's muscle memory for them, so they can kind of explain more easily what they're doing. How then have you, since you've shot those weddings, how many would you say you've second shot since then? Like in total now, where are you?
In total, since I've started, I would say between like 40 and 60. I don't have a full number, but I've done probably 20 or so a year since then.
That's great. And just as a side note, the way that I discovered you was Nathan on another call talking about how great you are and just how much he was impressed with you as a second shooter, which is how I reached out to you. And I just love this because, like I said, he, as the co-founder of a company that finds second shooters, just saw something in you and took the time to give you that feedback. And I just love where this has gone for you and what you've done.
Yeah, I remember when you first reached out to me, you saying that, and I was like, wait, what live stream? Where? I had to go find it and listen to what he said, and I was like, just kind of blown away.
Yeah, he
'Cause I
was
don't
very
work for him that
complimentary.
often. I've only worked for him a handful of times. We've hung out like at gatherings, and we actually we went on a backpacking trip once together.
Did you? Where'd you go?
We went it's up in northwest PA. I forget the exact area, but it's a loop called Old Loggers Path,
Okay.
and it's a 30-mile round trip hike.
Wow.
And we went for 3 days and 3 days and 2 nights. It was me, him, Mike Morby from his own company. Plus,
Mike
he's
Morby Photography.
Right, and he's also the
Co-founder
of ShootWithMe.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of other guys as well. It was a big group thing at first through Speakeasy, but then most people dropped out of it, probably for good reason.
It's cool. Normally it's like a happy hour get together, and this was
Right.
a 30-mile, 3-day, 2-night hike.
Yeah, and Nathan was like, "Oh, don't worry, it's going to be like a vacation." But what I didn't know is Nathan's been hiking since he was a kid, and everything feels like a vacation to him. So, it just doesn't faze him. But I remember being halfway through on day 2 and feeling like I was going to die. So,
yeah,
it was quite the experience. But it was fun to get to do that, and having like the conversations and the campfire chats with everyone at the end of the day was kind of priceless. So,
yeah, I would think that would be awesome. Was there a lot of photography chatter?
Everything from photography to politics to religion. It was quite the gamut of topics.
That's awesome. So now you have done a ton of second shooting. Where are you with your plans? Are you doing your own primary shooting for weddings or not yet? Or what's the situation?
I do very little primary shooting for weddings at the moment. I did an elopement back in 2021. Yeah, 2021 for New Year's. I did one elopement in Philadelphia at City Hall for a couple that was referred to me from the Speakeasy. And I absolutely loved doing that. I'd like to do more elopement work in the future.
Yeah. Were you nervous?
Oh, of course. I even set up a mock shoot with friends of mine like a week before.
Did you?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I figured it would help me with my nerves, and I was like, there's got to be a friend of mine that wants free photos. And I found a friend and her boyfriend that were like, yeah, we'd love free photos of us together. I'm like, cool.
So then when the elopement rolled around, did you feel that made a big difference that you'd done a dry run?
Definitely. Because I knew where I wanted to go. I knew like what worked last time. I knew the place that I got kicked out of last time. So that was good to know.
Yeah. Because you're also limited with light because it's December. So you're losing light early. Yeah. If you're going to get kicked out of something.
We started after dark too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're limited.
Limited with light was an understatement. I just lit everything with flash.
Yeah. So how you said you loved it? It went really smoothly. Any hiccups at all?
No, not really.
All right. So one of your goals then is to shoot more elopements.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Elopements, specifically more like travel elopements, because I am big into nature and hiking.
Yeah.
I need to build the portfolio a little bit more for that and, find some of the clients for it.
So destination. Mm-hmm. Would you do destination weddings, like if they're not intimate elopements and it was a destination wedding?
Yeah, if I felt like the client was a good fit for me and I could provide what they needed.
What would make someone not a good fit for you as a client?
Really just like if you kind of get vibes that they're not looking for your style for one, or they're going to be like extremely high maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
red flags.
That works for some people. Some people can handle that, but I especially think when you're newer to taking on your own jobs, you don't want to risk it with the people who are potentially going to be way more picky.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get in over your head
easily. You want
easily.
to take the stuff that that feels safest for you, that the people who like your style already and understand what it is you do, and the people that you kind of feel like you connect with to a degree, at least through, you know, your initial emails, and if you do like a Zoom call with them or something like that.
Yeah. And what would you say your style that you shoot? What's your shooting style?
I definitely prefer more darker, moody stuff. I use a lot of flash when I work. It's just something that I enjoy the look of.
Which I think is great for someone who is mostly a second shooter and hasn't done as many primary roles. Your skill set in flash is not the norm, you know?
I really didn't have anything to base my skill set off of because I was completely new to the whole scene. So, and I also didn't have anything to base like my experience off of. So I remember meeting up with people at the speakeasy meetups and them telling me like, your portfolio gives off like lead shooter vibes, or like, it's incredible that you've gotten this many jobs this quickly. And I was like, that's not normal. I'm like, I don't know. This is just how things work.
It was your normal. Yeah.
I don't know any better. So to hear people saying that wasn't normal was surprising to me.
Yeah. And with regards to those meetups, how would you say to date, if you had to list the ways that you've picked up second shooting opportunities, what has been the biggest area for you?
Like, where have I gotten the most jobs from?
Yeah.
It's been ShootWithMe, easily.
Yeah, you've got, I think, over like 14 reviews on there. You've got a great rating. And then
I got like 3 more reviews in the last day or 2 also.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Good for you. And then I think you said Speakeasy. You still do well in that group.
Yeah, I still get people occasionally through there. I just did a wedding 2 weeks ago with someone I'd never worked for before. And we connected super well at the wedding. And
I love that.
He was more of a natural light photographer, which is, some people kind of like bash on that because they're like, oh, that's someone who doesn't know how to use flash. The guy knew how to use flash too, but he just didn't bring an extensive setup with him. But for the reception, it was all like high ceilings and dark wood. So he usually does bounce flash, and he couldn't really do that very well in this scenario. Yeah. So he said this is the first time, like in 13 years of working, that he was struggling with lighting. And I had my flash set up, and I showed him like what I had for my lighting setup, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna lean on you for like the reception and the ceremony entrances for this. So he was like, just do whatever you need to do and tell whoever you need out of your way to get out of your way.
Yeah, that's what I mean as far as like you're not the norm when it comes to your skill set level with flash as a second shooter. So what is your kit? What did you have with you? Or do you take to weddings for your flash setup?
My kit is very basic in my understanding. It's I use a Godox TT600 as my on-camera flash, which is, I don't know if it's a flash you can even buy anymore. It's full manual. It costs like $50. It's powered from AA batteries. It's not the greatest thing. So you don't get like TTL or anything with it, but I don't really care about TTL, and I've never used it in most situations. I've always just been a manual person. And then for my off cameras, I use I have a Flashpoint and Godox are the same company basically, but I have a Flashpoint and Godox 8200 Pro is the ones I'm using. The Pro is just, it has a slightly faster recycle time, I believe, and it goes down 1 extra stop in power.
Oh, okay. Does it 1/256?
Yeah, it's not. Okay. It's not an incredible thing for event photography. You don't really need to go down in power that often. But I also do, product photography for myself sometimes, and studio stuff, and being able to go down in power in that situation is really helpful.
Okay.
But I use those, and then I I have Rogue gels that I use for my color balancing for receptions, because a lot of the time everything's kind of amber colored.
Right.
And then I use Magmod gear, but
Okay.
some people might not love me for this, but I use Magmod gear off of AliExpress, so it's like Chinese knockoff stuff.
Oh, okay.
But I found that because Magmod is made in China already, the gear is basically copied because it's kind of Wild West out there in a way.
Right.
So you can get literally the same stuff, but
because it grids like $35.
Yeah, and I get grids for like $8. So it's just, you have to wait like a month to get them in the mail, which is sometimes, a deal breaker when you're in the middle of a season. But if you know what you want ahead of time and you order extra, you just get what you need.
Yeah, that's 4 for the price of 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I told some other photographers about it too, and they're like, "Wait, what? Can you send that to me?" Yeah.
I know someone else who does that, and she was a big fan of it. And now, as far as other modifications, are you doing like the sphere or the mag bounce or anything like that?
I use a sphere for my on camera a lot of the time. I didn't for a long time, and then I used one from another photographer, and I was like, wow, I love the look of it, so I started using it. It just made like grip and grins way easier to do.
Yeah.
And then for the 8200s, I just use 90% of the time I use grids and gels.
Okay.
Just to control the light and to make sure that I have a little bit of color balance when I want it. Or if I want to do something a little more out of the box and I want to like have a pop of color somewhere in the background or something like that.
All right. Now, this photographer that you worked with, who you guys were in this dark space, how happy was he with your photos then?
He was very happy with them. I reached out to him afterwards and I was like, hey, if you have any feedback, like if anything was not to your liking, whatever, which is something I usually do when I work with someone new, because I just want to know where I stand with them. And he reached out to me like immediately and he was like, oh, you were great. Everything is perfect. Like, he was like, I paid you a little bit extra too, because you kind of saved me in that situation. So
that's nice. That goes a long way. You know, as a second shooter, you really do appreciate it. So that was nice. That's great. Another good pairing. So hopefully you guys will work together again.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. He said he's definitely going to reach out to me in the future, but only time tells with that kind of thing.
Yeah. But I think photographers really do appreciate when they find a second shooter that they work well with and really puts out the effort. And, you know, in your case, like I said, with the flash ability, it's important. So, all right. So we talked about Shoot With Me, Speakeasy, and then I think you said word of mouth is then your next biggest area that you're.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just come after the other things, basically.
Yeah.
As I work with more people, I've had more people recommend me to other people. And I had someone that I worked with early on kind of warned me when I got started. She was like, when you get into this more and people start realizing that you're good at what you do, it's going to snowball really quickly. And you need to be careful not to overbook yourself like ahead of a season also, and then end up halfway through a season with no break in sight and you're burnt out. So that was good advice to get too.
So with that advice, did you set yourself a limit for months, or how did you control that?
So far, I haven't had to do that. But I think my limit would be like, I don't enjoy shooting triples right now. Like, I don't mind shooting a double weekend. I don't mind shooting like second shooting twice in a row. I know some people that are totally fine second shooting a triple, or even doing a double of their own weddings and then second shooting. But for me, I think that would be too much to do like a bunch of triples, or to have my own weddings and second shooter gigs together. Yeah. So right now I try to keep it to to either doubles or I'll work second shooter and an assistant gig in the same weekend.
Got it. That's a good way to control the burnout then. Like you have an idea then for yourself what your limit is and you are mindful of it. So that makes sense. With regards to your gear, I know you had mentioned you did just get a new camera. So what did you get in the past few days?
So I actually just got a new camera today.
Today, okay.
And I have been looking at cameras for a while, and I was actually partly thinking about maybe switching back to another company, but I ended up deciding to stick with Sony, and I picked up a A7R5 just now.
Okay.
And I've only taken it out for half an hour today just to like shoot some nature. And I'm already in love with like how well the autofocusing works on it. Like I have no complaints with my old autofocus system on the A7R3, but the focus is just so snappy on this camera. And I heard like when I was looking into the stats of it, it has like an AI chip in it now.
Wow.
So it uses like machine learning to prioritize the different type of subject that you want it to focus on. Like you can set it to human or animals or birds, insects, all kinds of crazy things.
Wow.
And it does really well with that. I was shooting some animals outside and it just grabbed them immediately. And there were times where it grabbed the eye of the animal. And I just like, it's crazy how much you don't have to do when
That's
it comes
impressive.
to autofocus now.
Yeah.
I'm used to fighting my old camera. So now like when the camera does half the work for me, it's just, it frees me up to focus on framing and everything else.
Yeah. Now, with regards to your other gear, do you have a favorite lens for weddings?
Right now, it's a 24-70. It's my favorite lens just because it kind of does everything.
Is it the 2.8?
Yep.
Okay.
It's the Sigma 24-70 2.8 art series lens.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people like swear by primes, but for one, I'm not at the point where I want to have a whole kit of prime lenses. So it's just simpler for me to carry a zoom around. But I don't really have any issue with the quality that I get out of this. And it's a good lens. I literally shot the first few seconds shooting gigs that I had with one camera body and that lens and nothing else.
Oh, wow. Well, that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, some people would say impressive and other people would be like, that's dangerous.
It's risky.
Which is something I figured out later. Nathan told me that the first wedding too. He was like, you need another lens. I'm like, all right, okay, I'll get one.
What was your second lens? Do you remember what your second lens was?
My second lens was 70 to 180 from Tamron.
Okay.
It being a 180 instead of 200. It's still a 2.8 aperture. But it being a 180 instead lets them like just make it cost a little bit less and it's a little bit lighter to carry. So it was kind of buy the Sony equivalent that weighed 3 times as much and cost 2.5 times what this lens did, or get this one.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
And this, I'll be honest, it's not my favorite lens in the world. But it does the job just fine. And for the price, I'm not worried about like it not being worth it, you know?
Yeah. And it's the right thing to do when it's your second lens. And at the time you were just getting into the business.
Right.
So it's the right thing to do. All right. So Nit, do you shoot any primes right now?
Currently on the Sony system, I don't have any primes. I'm looking at picking up an 85, but
okay.
But I don't have any primes. When I shot with my Nikon, I had a 50 millimeter 1.8 that I shot with a lot of the time.
Okay. And then on a wedding day, currently, do you shoot with 2 bodies or will you be shooting with 2 bodies?
So for for all of the weddings that I've done so far, I've shot with one body, and then I've carried my Nikon as the backup, which is not a great backup, but it's the backup that I have just in case something goes horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've shot everything on one body, and that was a big part of why I bought this new body, is to have two.
Yeah, it's nice to then have just the two lens options at your fingertips.
Yeah, it's annoying to have to change lenses and to not have, like, either you have access to a wide and no telephoto option, or you have the telephoto and no wide.
Mm-hmm.
So that's frustrating sometimes when you see a shot and you can't get it because you don't have the correct lens on you.
Yeah, and just the brain power of trying to anticipate what you're going to need. And with a wedding, it's so fast, and there are all these moments that aren't going to come around again. And so you're anticipating what the best lens is to have on and when will be a good time to change it out for something else. And you don't want to make a mistake. So it's definitely nice if you can eliminate some of that.
Yeah. I mean, like I've said before, I lean a lot on the 24-70, and I find that to be enough for most cases.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there's one little trick that I use with the Sony bodies that I have.
What's that?
Since I use like the R series, which is the higher resolution sensor, they have all of the Sony bodies have a crop mode where they go into a 1.5x crop, and I've mapped the crop to one of my like custom buttons on the camera.
Oh,
so I just use that crop for an extra 50% zoom.
Oh, so yeah, then you're 70. Then that puts you at what, up like 100? 105.
Yeah.
So with that one lens, you're 24 to 105. So, I mean, that's going to cover you for the majority of stuff.
Yeah. And with the higher megapixel sensor, when I crop into that 1.5 mode, I'm still shooting at like 18 megapixels, I think, which is plenty.
Yeah, it is for sure. What's your favorite part of a wedding day?
That's kind of a tough one. It used to be that I hated receptions because I didn't understand how to light them. Like I just struggled so hard with the lighting of a reception, and I could never get anything good out of it, and I didn't understand how people got good photos out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But now I've started to enjoy them a lot more. It's the kind of thing, like, I enjoy the reception for the first, like, 20 minutes, and then it becomes really monotonous.
That's so true.
But otherwise, I just kind of enjoy, like, the portraits and the prep side.
Okay.
Sometimes there's, like, really cool just moments in between that are fun to catch. So that's something I've been trying to be better at. But prep is always a lot of fun just because it's your first chance, for me as a second shooter, to like make a connection with the people I'm working with.
Yeah.
And get to see like what their personality is, like, you know, for me in some cases it's like where do I draw the line with how far I go with my jokes to try to get them to laugh, you know?
Right.
And it sets the tone for the day. So I enjoy that part of it a lot. And
I like
portraits,
that.
Just because it's where I get to be the most creative in my eyes most of the time, because I really like setting up shots with lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like doing night shots specifically is one of my favorite things.
For your ideal light shot, what is your lighting setup?
I like to do like the nighttime stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm usually just using one or two of my my 8200s, and I'll either do like, I mean, I don't know if there's an ideal, because I kind of just use my kit very, like, I just use it constantly in different ways, and I don't have a huge kit, so I'm just using the same thing most of the time. And it just varies depending on the look of the space that I'm in.
Okay.
I like to do silhouettes a lot.
Okay. You like
That's
silhouettes.
a simple one, but a lot of the time I can literally just give the groom my my speed light, and I'll just have them pointed at a wall behind them, and that's a simple shot, but it always makes people go like, "Oh wow, how do you do that?"
Yeah, it's a good one to have in your bag of tricks. So, okay, that's kind of what I meant. Like, what do you when you're doing that night shot? And then the other ones, I'm assuming, are like just the nice off-camera flash that you're using to light them outside.
I did one recently that I was pretty happy with, where I was given the opportunity to just kind of take over and do any shot that I wanted from the lead shooter, which was a nice opportunity. You don't always get that.
No, you don't.
And the building we were at was big, had like giant white pillars, was a beautiful country club building.
Okay.
And it was nighttime, so I ended up setting up my two 8200s between the pillars.
Okay.
And I asked the groom what the bride and groom's like favorite colors were.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I gelled my 8200s to their favorite colors, which ended up being orange and purple.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to see if their favorite colors would mesh well.
And
that worked perfectly. So I gelled those, and I basically lit up the entire building, half purple and half orange.
Oh, wow.
And then I took my speed light and put it on a stand and lit them. So I just had them kind of in the foreground, and then the background of the building lit up with the different colors. And I did one more shot where I pulled them with the same lighting setup, pulled them to a door of the building, and I turned it so the colored lights became the foreground with the pillars, and I did a silhouette shot with them against the door.
So just
I got two shots out of the same.
Typical second shooter stuff right there.
In my experience.
No, not at all for you. For you. Well, and it sounds like they came out great.
I was really happy with them, and I posted them on Speakeasy as well, and the couple was happy when they saw them in the back of my camera, so I'm assuming that they'll enjoy them when the studio delivers them as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And it's funny too with the night shots, because you're doing all this stuff and they can't tell what it's going to look like because they're just seeing flashes going off. So that is one of the times during the day where I feel like it's okay to give them a little peek at the back of the camera, because it buys you a little bit of patience and flexibility there.
Yeah, I remember they were walking past my flashes on the ground, and they're like, "What are those? Are those sparklers?" It's always funny when they see like your equipment and they're like, "Wait, what's that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hang on, you'll see."
Is there anything right now during weddings that your least favorite part of the wedding?
That's a good question. Other than a reception that drags on for too long, or I was stuck at a wedding with Daniel from Morby at one point where there was a groom's speech or groomsmen speech that lasted half an hour.
No.
And everyone in the place looked like they wanted to die. And
12 minutes is long.
Yeah.
Half an hour.
Half an hour.
Oh my God. There's no way it was good.
You just can't keep a speech going for that long.
No. It's like a State of the Union address.
To hear that.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, but other than that, really, it's not something that I hate, but it's something I feel like I struggle with more, is just getting better, like, documentary style shots and, like, making those interesting, because I see a lot of other people in the groups that do it really, really well.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just currently a weak point that I have.
I think that is one of the more difficult ways to shoot. And I was actually talking to Tara Raskowski last week because she's really good at it. And she was giving me some really good advice. And that's one of my goals as well, because you see some of these photos and her advice was you're trying to tell the whole story in one picture. So not just like one short sentence, but the full story. So it's impressive when people nail it. So that's definitely a good goal. I like that.
Yeah. Like,
sorry,
the Speakeasy, there's Chuck who does that really well, and he teaches a class as well.
Chuck Iannarino.
Yeah.
I did his documentary family photography course. He's
Nice.
amazing. Yeah.
I want to take his class one day.
Yes, it's a good one. He's been a teacher for decades. So when you're working with him, like in your course with him, you can just tell he's just a natural teacher and a good leader, and he's fantastic, and he's really good with feedback. So I certainly recommend that, and he's excellent at the documentary. And I feel like he's tough on himself. Like he definitely is always trying to puch himself to do more and more. So he's very good. So all right, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I always saw his work and him talking to other people, and I always like admired what he did.
Yes.
And it was like a few days ago that I posted some stuff, and I always ask for like constructive criticism when I post something. And he like messaged me on Facebook, and he was like, "Hey, first of all, I really love your stuff. 2, if you want it, I have feedback for you." And I ended up talking to him like for an entire day, basically just going back and forth with what he was telling me, that like what he liked about my stuff, and then like what he didn't like about it, and what he wanted me to like try to focus on doing more, which was super cool to hear from him.
Oh, that's awesome. Was there anything that you remember as standing out as like a really good piece of advice from that conversation?
He was saying just to like lean into the styles that you like more, and like the things that make you more unique. Like for me, like my background in music and like my background in outdoorsy stuff, he was like, lean into the style of that more and just like set yourself apart. He said he liked my stuff, but to him, like a lot of it was kind of boring in a way. He was like, you could kind of put any groom or any bride in my photos and that would work. And he's like, that's saying a good thing, but also it's like, it doesn't set me apart from anyone. So that was like his main advice that I took away from it. I'm trying, like at the last wedding, I tried shooting a bunch of stuff in more unconventional ways to like add a little more motion to things and just try things when I was already confident that I had the basics.
Yeah, when you have the safe shots. Chuck does a great job with motion blur and using it, like just enough motion blur, and then just enough images with motion blur. It's not, the whole album is all motion blur. Right. And I feel like I never remember at the wedding to make an effort to do a little bit of that. I'm just, in safe mode. So I'll have to try to remember that.
You have to remember in the moment to switch your settings to a shutter speed that you're usually not going to touch because it messes with things.
Right. He had good advice when I was in his class too. He uses the user settings where you have like 3, I'm sure Sony has something really similar, 3 like presets almost. I don't know if that's not the right word. And then icon system, it's user 1, user 2, user 3. So he actually sets up a bunch of different settings. And so one of those is for, I think it's like reception shutter drag. So he has one so we can just like dial over to that and then have all of the settings adjusted, which I thought was a good tip.
Right. Like a lot of cameras have the like manual shutter priority, aperture priority, auto, but then a lot of them will have on the dial, they'll have like 1, 2, and 3 or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a good tip. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I love your story. I love how amazing your work has become, all of your talent, and you're well respected by a lot of really great photographers. So it's something you should be super proud of. So as far as your future, I think we talked about elopements and destination weddings and like outdoor weddings. So where can everybody find your work?
Well, I have a website. It's just MikeRagusaPhotography.com.
Okay.
I also have an Instagram that goes by the same handle, just Mike Ragusa Photography. And I'm basically on everything under that handle. I have a Facebook that I don't keep up with very well.
I don't think any of us do anymore.
My website do stay up to date pretty well.
And where are you based out of, just for people listening?
I'm based out of Abington, Pennsylvania, which is 30 minutes northwest of Philadelphia.
I was there on Saturday.
It's funny.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I hope to talk to you soon. And I can't wait to see more of your upcoming work.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it's been a pleasure getting to talk to you. I remember when we did like the pre-interview, just like we talked on the phone, and I could tell that we'd be able to talk for hours if we wanted to.
I know. Absolutely. There's just so much. I can go down any rabbit hole talking about anything with the photography.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mark of a good interviewer as well, when you feel like you can talk forever.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll let you go. And again, thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Enjoy
Thanks,
the rest
Mike.
of your day.
You too. All right. Bye.
Take care.